Hello and welcome to the creativity task. So what is the creativity task exactly? So in this task, you'll be provided with a prompt from a user, for example, question, instruction, or statement, to an AI chatbot, along with two potential machine-generated responses to the prompt. Your job is to assess which of the two responses is better for the prompt, evaluating it in three key areas. The first area is fulfillment, which means to what extent does the response demonstrate that it correctly understands the user's request in the prompt. The second area will be helpfulness, to what extent the response is providing satisfying content for the prompt. And the third area will be presentation, to what extent is the content of the response conveyed well. Next, we are going to analyze the three key areas. So the first one was fulfillment. In fulfillment, the responses should address the intent of the user's prompt such that a user would not feel the prompt was ignored or misinterpreted by the response. Adhere to any requirements indicated in the prompt, such as an explicitly specified word length, tone, format, or information that the response should include. Next, we have helpfulness. Now, in helpfulness, the responses should provide specific, comprehensive, and up-to-date information for the user needs expressed in the prompt. When appropriate for the prompt, exceed the user's request by providing relevant details and related information to contextualize content and help the user better understand the response. Not contain inaccurate, deceptive, or misleading information based on our current knowledge or a quick web search. You don't need to perform a rigorous fact check. Not contain harmful, offensive, or overly sexual content. In a quick note, in terms of the creativity area, this is where we would mark a violation of the safety guidelines in helpfulness. And lastly, presentation. So in presentation, the response should be organized in a structure that is easy to consume and understand. This information is ordered appropriately and makes good use of formatting such paragraph, lists, or tables. Be clearly written in a polite, neutral tone unless otherwise explicitly requested by the prompt. Be coherent without part of the response contradicting another part of the response. Not include notable language issues or grammatical errors. Not be rambling, repetitive, or contain clearly off-topic information. Now, for each of these creativity areas, we will have rating scales. So on your screen, you will see the rating scales for all key areas. Let's just quickly go through them. Fulfillment. First rating, not at all. This is a negative score. This means that the response does not address the most important aspects of the prompt. The user would feel like their request was not at all understood. Partially. Response does not address some minor aspects and/or ignore some requirements of the prompt. The user would feel like their request was partially understood. Completely. Response addresses all aspects and adheres to all requirements of the prompt. The user would feel like their request was completely understood. Helpfulness. Not at all. Response is useless or irrelevant, contains inaccurate, deceptive, misleading information and/or contains harmful, offensive, overly sexual content. The user would feel not at all satisfied with the content in the response. Somewhat. Response is relevant to the prompt and provides some useful content, but could be more relevant, comprehensive, and/or detailed. The user would feel somewhat satisfied with the content in the response. Very. Response is useful and very comprehensive in addressing the needs in the prompt and usually beyond what explicitly asked. The user would feel very satisfied with the content in the response. Presentation. Poor. Response is poorly written or has notable structural, formatting, language, or grammar issues. The user would feel the content of the response was convened poorly. Adequate. Response could have been written organized better or may have minor language grammar issues, but the user would still feel the content of the response was easy to understand. Excellent. Response is very well written and organized. The content of the response is convened in a way that is comparable to a response a talented human might produce. And this will be the rating scales that you will be using in the creativity task. Now, some important things before we move to the next part. What is the order of importance when rating? Fulfillment, helpfulness, and presentation. Where do we flag a violation or a controversial topic? In helpfulness. Even though fulfillment takes place as the most important when rating, sometimes helpfulness will take over. This will apply if the rating level is low, not at all helpful. This happens when the response is not true or violates a safety guideline. The meaning of ellipses. If a user finishes a sentence with ellipses, the three dots, it will trigger the machine into fill in the blank/creative mode and finish the sentence for the user. Now let's take a look at the task. So upon opening the task, the first thing you will see will be the user's prompt, followed by the prompt evaluation. Now, what does "is the prompt understandable" means? Essentially, you'll be checking if it is in your target language and also if it isn't gibberish or nonsensical. Bear in mind that this is a critical point of quality evaluations. After prompt evaluation, you'll be greeted with both chatbot responses, and below each response, you'll be greeted with the following questions. This is where you will be assessing the chatbot's response towards the user's prompt. Last but not least, you'll need to indicate which of the responses is the best. The decision must be based and supported by your previous evaluation of each response. Using about the same is only applicable when both responses are virtually the same. Regarding the explanation, if there is any sources or links that you can provide to the auditor to prove your point, this is the place to paste those links. One more thing. In some cases, images might show up in the task. If that's the case, you'll be prompted with 2 extra questions. Do the images in the response improve the response? And how relevant are the images? Thank you for attending the Creativity module.